y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to a video that was very much inspired by Hannah Smoky Glow's videos. That was her forgotten makeup brands. That was a really great video. I will leave it down below. And I was initially going to do sort of an offshoot on that. I was like, oh, I want to talk about brands that we don't talk about no more for one way or another. Y'all know I like to get a little psychoanalyzation of the makeup community going. That's something that's very near and dear to my heart, you know, kind of discussing, you know, the development, excuse me, burp squad, the development of makeup and beauty and consumerism and kind of how it all adjusts and changes during the years. But I thought I would do instead a video that is going through, in my mind, my opinions, allegedly, what makeup companies that used to be the best, that used to be the hallmark in beauty. These were the brands that you bought. These were the brands that you know, tried and true. And this was what everyone used to love. Because as years pass and time goes on, obviously, there is a plethora of makeup being released. There is a multitude of new makeup brands being released. And so as such, you know, as trends come, as they go, new items are being made, you know, sort of sometimes brands that used to be held or had such a high standard sort of get lost with the insurgence of newer, better companies and products. And so I'm just going to be going through a list of brands that I think, like I said, in my opinion, companies and brands that used to be the best. Brands that even, you know, not so long ago, you know, 5-6 years ago, when I started really getting into that makeup journey, there were companies that were like, yes, this is the peak best that we're ever gonna get. And so companies that I shopped from and purchased from because they were such a high standard. I feel like I'm gonna start with two of the most obvious ones, two brands that were during my beginning and during the start of my makeup journey and my YouTube journey even. So not that long ago, I would say, you know, 5 to 6 years ago, these two brands, were two of the biggest names, and that is going to be Too Faced and Urban Decay. Two brands that I feel sort of go hand in hand with one another during that time, because at that time, if you think about during the peak of their palettes, especially if you're considering the naked palettes. I mean, the naked palettes are something that when I think of, you know, the majority of them are shimmers, not a lot of mattes. You know, they aren't a palette that has aged well, because as we've come more into different makeup trends, into different makeup styles, you know, people favor a more matte look. People typically are going for a more intricate, a more in-depth look, whereas at the time, those naked palettes, especially the 1 through 3, are very almost early 2000s-esque, and in my opinion, the early 2000s skewed late 90s for about 5 years. And so that all shimmery, sort of minimalistic, glossy, skinny eyebrows, you know, dark brown overlined lips was kind of still the thing. And while I feel like the Too Faced chocolate bars have aged significantly better than the Urban Decay original naked palettes, I feel once again that at the time of the makeup consumer, yes, makeup has been a booming industry for an extended period of time. But at that time, I feel like a lot of makeup artistry hadn't reached its sort of alternative peak. You know, makeup artistry was something that was more, you know, you did bridal and you did, you know, homecoming, you know, and at the time it was much more of a demure, elegant sort of thing, whereas now there is a lot more acceptance when it comes to the normality of using bright colors. So when you have your brand, which is banked on this era of more softer and more subtle, you know, less crazy makeup, it sometimes makes it difficult for you to age well with the times. And another thing that's really important about Urban Decay and Too Faced, especially with Urban Decay, at one point in time, I do feel like Urban Decay was a very cutting edge company. They were very much ahead of the times, ahead of the trends. You know, they created trends and all that sort of thing. Whereas now, as an overall company, aesthetic aside, it's sort of this thing where, you know, something will happen, a trend will happen, and it will come and go, and then Urban Decay will be like, wait, we got it too. We're getting on this bandwagon when the bandwagon has left like last year. And so when you're unable to maintain a consistent theme and a consistent ability to be within the times and what's good and what's hot, and you're just releasing sort of random products, you start to have a disconnect with your consumers in the sense of they're not sure what to expect. Urban Decay and Too Faced used to be two brands that had very concrete aesthetics, very established ideas of what they produced as companies. Whereas now with Too Faced, I mean, they're just running around releasing whatever they want willy-nilly. Urban Decay, I don't think is nearly as bad as Too Faced when it comes to just the amount of stuff that they're releasing, and that they're releasing to the point and the detriment of having inconsistent quality. So now, while I consider Too Faced and Urban Decay, at least in my mind, not being top tier companies because of not necessarily that they've left their roots or that they're releasing so much. It's more the fact that compared to other companies that have been around much less time, that are able to create consistent quality compared to these big, as we like to say, what is it? Like, you know, you have the fashion houses, you know, these makeup houses that are unable to produce consistent, aesthetically pleasing, and quality-based products, make them not on that same level that they used to be 5 or 6 years ago. Two brands that are, I feel, a little bit less offensive. Like when you think of Urban Decay and you think of Too Faced, you think of basically the golden era of makeup. And then these are two, a little bit more, you know, a little bit less, but Lorac and Smashbox. Now, Lorac was a brand that I still love their matte eyeshadow formula. It is one of my favorites. Powdery, but heckin' pigmented, and they blend like a dream. I don't think I own any Smashbox products in my collection. I have tried a couple different, I've tried lipsticks, I've tried foundation, I've tried eyeshadow, and I just haven't really been impressed. They aren't my aesthetic. But once again, sort of in the same vein as Urban Decay and Too Faced, when you think of what other brands there are out there, especially in conjunction with the amount of indie brands and affordable makeup companies, there used to be a very significant disconnect between high-end and drugstore. Whereas high-end was like, okay, all right, 99.9%, you're paying extra money, but you're getting a better quality product. Whereas drugstore was like, okay, here's the one hidden gem amidst the 50 other products we had to sift through. Whereas now, drugstore and affordable is performing on the same level as their higher priced counterparts, some of which performing better. And so when it comes to Smashbox, that's a company that I don't see them doing a lot, and them not doing a lot in comparison to other companies that are able to offer the same thing at a much lower discount at probably a higher quality point. Like I remember I had the Smashbox. Oh my goodness, they had those two palettes. They were kind of like held in the same esteem as the Too Faced chocolate bar and the Urban Decay naked palettes. I absolutely despise them. I absolutely hate it. I thought Smashbox was a very overrated, underperforming brand. But they had hallmarks such as the photo, you know, that primer. Oh my goodness, that primer. But I feel like Smashbox has been a brand that just hasn't aged well. You know, it's a brand that, you know, it has the primer and then it'll occasionally release something, whatever. You know, I haven't seen much in the way of Smashbox breaking or, you know, really changing up the makeup game. Lorac is a company that is at least trying. You know, they've had some very, you know, fanciful collabs. You know, they've had the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Beauty and the Beast. You know, they're trying to be a little bit younger, a little bit hip, even though I consider Lorac to be a brand that's targeted demographic is probably middle age and higher, which is funny because I'm going on 30. Is that middle age? But when you have a brand that sort of has that kind of aesthetic, you know, it's a little bit harder to break out of that because you're like, and every time Lorac releases some kind of bright palettes, they're like, I'm not sure how that's gonna do. But at least Lorac is one that is, you know, trying to, you know, emerge into the 21st century, as it were. They also have palettes and things that they used to be hallmarked for that haven't aged well. Concepts that haven't aged well. Case in point, the Lorac Mega Pros. I have 3 of them and I use like half of one, you know, and like I feel if they were to go back to that, they don't release them anymore, they stopped at 4. If they were to go back to releasing those Mega Pro palettes, I don't think a lot of people would be very interested. I feel that when it comes to Lorac and these majorly massive, disjointed, occasionally similar in color theory pro palettes, at this point in time, a majority of the makeup audience, they're seeking much more curated color theory. You know, we want bang for our buck, but we want it to be bang that we're going to use rather than giving us a plethora of throwaway shades. And so I feel like if they were even to resurrect one thing that made them a hallmark company that people, I mean, the Lorac Mega Pro palettes, everybody needed to have those, you know, one thing that was so coveted and revered and desired. Just in the changed altitude of today's makeup climate, I don't think they would do well. And obviously that's just my opinion. That's just my speculation. I don't know what any of y'all think about that. Okay, another very near and dear to my heart, you know, brand that used to be the top, the peak, the pinnacle, at least for me. But Kat Von D, now KVD, Kendo Vegan Love Beauty. I mean, I'm sorry, Kendo just needs to take that whole brand and just scrap it and start from the beginning. Because part of the reason it's not aging well right now is this rebrand. What made the Kat Von D brand so different, so aesthetic, was her artistic involvement within it. You know, you think about the palette, the typography. You know, she was designing everything. She's a tattoo artist. So all of the imagery used for her products and packaging was created by her. And so for her to no longer be in there and them still using her typography and if they're going to release new products, are they going to try to recreate that? Because she ain't a part of the company no more. They can't go to her and be like, hey Kat, can you bang us out a nifty drawing for this palette? So I am very confused as to what they plan on doing to move KVD forward, because when the aesthetic of the brand is literally created by someone who's no longer a part of the company, I'm like, did we really think this through? Like I said, they should have just, you know, burned everything and been like, all right, it's not Kat Von D anymore. Let's create a new brand that's Kendo, Vegan, Love, whatever. And we know the majority of why they're doing that. It's because they've got packaging with KVD on it that they don't want to take that fall for price whatever, so they're gonna keep it. So they're like, all right, we gotta come up with an acronym that's gonna work with these letters. But you know, when Kat Von D was high and thriving and doing their thing, you know, they were the peak. When I was my young baby bat gothic days, when I didn't know diddly about eyeshadow blending or anything like that, part of the reason I was drawn to the Kat Von D was because of the aesthetic, because she was a company that was coming out with different color stories that weren't offered by Lorac, Smashbox, Too Faced, and Urban Decay. Although during the golden time, Urban Decay and Kat Von D were the two ones that you went to for like those crazier alternative colors. But you know, she was a brand that offered something completely different on the market, especially the mainstream market, like I said, which was majorly dominated by those more neutral, natural, just less alternative companies. And so to have that company that's basically like, hi, I'm a rebel, I'm a reject, I'm a freak, buy me. I mean, like I said, I was buying it for a long time. I mean, I loved a lot of the products, y'all know this. But like, I was buying a lot of it for the aesthetic, because it appealed to me, because it filled something within my sad little depressed gothic heart. But if you think about now, once again, a lot of these companies, and one thing that we're learning, which I think is absolutely fantastic, with a lot of these mainstream, big, once king of the world makeup brand companies, what they are starting to fall to are those more, I was about to say more better, and then I wanted to stop, but we're here now. Those less expensive companies that are able to deliver on an alternative aesthetic as well as banging formulas. I mean, ColourPop I know is hideously mainstream at this point. They're not an indie. Oh, we just have Super Shock, whatever. They're like, no, we got everything. We make everything. We release more stuff than Too Faced. They are a perfect example of a company that has a much lower price point that delivers a very high level of quality. I mean, we got Juvia's Place. They're more mainstream now. My new favorite is Midas Cosmetics. I mean, there's Lethal Cosmetics. There's like, Bitter Lace Beauty. We've got Give Me Glow. You know, there is a huge amount, an influx of indie makeup companies that are going to, in my opinion, take the place of these huge makeup brands because they have been able to deliver consistent aesthetic and consistent quality and provide quality that is superior to brands like Natasha Denona who are charging $129, $230 for their eyeshadow palettes. Now don't get me wrong, your girl goes hard for some overpriced Viseart. That is one of my favorite formulas. But you know, it's sort of like with this whole thing, you know, there are other, you know, what is it? Melt Cosmetics. They're a big thing now. What is it? I mean, Black Moon Cosmetics. You know, there are other alternative, edgy, gothy, whatever companies that you can get that alternative kick from. So while Kat Von D at one point was very unique in the market in her aesthetic as well as her makeup, it's just not that anymore. Okay, a company that this one is sort of a little bit, I don't want to say, I hesitate to say convoluted, but a company that had a very high rise. Like a lot of these brands that I've noticed, at least in my time doing this, is that some of these, they have this, you know, all right, they're consistent, they're whatever, then they have this golden era where they are like, yes, everything they release, everyone wants. Everything they release, everything they touch turns to gold. And that is actually Wet n Wild, which, for a time, a lot of their products were those unsung or those very sung heroes of the drugstore. You know, during the era of Urban Decay and Too Faced and all that, people would be like, well, you need this one eyeshadow. I cannot tell you. When I started watching and doing YouTube videos, how many people told me I needed that, oh my goodness, that one eyeshadow palette. I will leave a picture of it somewhere, but it had like that one blue, green, whatever eyeshadow that people were like, this is exactly like Max thus and such. Comfort Zone, the Comfort Zone palette. Like I said, I can't tell you how many people were like, you go out and buy these shiz. I actually never had it because it wasn't a color theory that I was like, oh boy. But you know, they're blushes and they're whatever. And then when they released I feel like when they released those Mega Glow highlighters is when they really started riding that bandwagon of we're going to the top, we're affordable, we've got banging formulas, we've got great products. You know, it was a time when you could rely on an affordable company to provide really good, and they released their foundation, they had, you know, their bronzer product that was a cult favorite, natural highlighter for everywhere. They had that contour duo, the blushes, the liquid lipsticks. You know, for a while there, they were releasing amazing stuff. And they still release pretty amazing stuff. There have been a couple Wet n Wild releases where I'm like, oh, what's up? You look cute. But what has changed Wet n Wild is, number one, they suffer from let's release a lot of things. One thing that sort of, me, I remember when they released that, they were doing those like boxes where they would have the whole collection. And I think they started out at like $25, and then every time they released another one, they bumped that price up just a little bit more. Now, I admit, some of the collections did have more product. They had more PR-like packaging, you know, and so there is that. But one thing that makes a company, that makes people not happy with a company, is when you lie. Is when, for an extended period of time, you tout yourself as being fantastically cruelty-free. I mean, that's another thing that made them super whatever, is the fact that they were an affordable, reliable company that provided cruelty-free and vegan options. But people don't like being lied to. And a lot of people, myself included, I don't shop from Wet n Wild no more because I don't believe they are cruelty-free, or at least not entirely. And so where they once had this like almost untouchable, I mean, when Wet n Wild would release, this is, I used to tell my mom, because I can't tell you how many times my mom through the years has driven me to Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, Target, every drugstore imaginable in an attempt to find certain drugstore Wet n Wild collections, and having no luck. Like, if it was a high-end whatever, you were more likely to get it than if it was a drugstore Wet n Wild release. You would go and they'd be like, sorry, we literally got 2 of everything and it's gone. Like that Wet n Wild, I mean, the highlighters, when the 2 Mega Glow ones were limited edition at first, or that that gold bar couldn't find that shiz nowhere. And so it is sad to see a level of consistency, which I think they still have managed to maintain. But I feel like the consumer, at least like I keep saying, I always reference things back to my experience, because that's what I know, that's what I have, that's what I am able to discuss. But we are learning in this time frame that I've been on YouTube, we are learning that, and we are also being less forgiving and understanding of companies not being completely upfront with us. We want brands and companies and owners to be held accountable for actions. And when they don't, and when they aren't, we are less likely to continue to support them with that financial pat on the back that says, you know, that's okay, all right, this behavior is still all right, we'll still support you. Which, I mean, we all know at some point, you know, to a certain degree, we can make that happen, because we all know what happened to KVD, and let me tell you, I know for a fact a large majority of people were not purchasing from her. And now she ain't a part of that company no more, and I'm not sure. I mean, them blushes and them whatevers were real good, but I'm not sure how that brand's gonna, like, keep itself going. Okay, another company that is one that I admit I don't have a lot of experience with. This has never been a brand that I'm like, oh yeah. Their aesthetic, their products, everything was something that I was living for. But I do have a few products from them. The Balm. I have quite a few blushes from them. I have the Mary Luminizer highlighter, which I never use. I don't think I've ever had any eyeshadow palettes from them, but if you think, once again, I'm going from my own experience. So when I was starting on YouTube and I was watching eyeshadow collections and hauls and declutters and all those kinds of videos that we like to binge, you know, I remember people would be talking about the Meet Matte palettes, you know, oh my goodness, they did the Meet Matte Nude, they did the Meet Matrimony, you know, I remember people were always like, oh my goodness, and kind of like in Urban Decay and Too Faced land, you know, these were kind of iconic, you know, they were palettes that everyone had for one reason or another, because there was that level of reputation that people really loved these things, and they were good and they were consistent, and you know, yeah, that worked for a while. You know, the Balm, they went on that for a little bit, and now, kind of like Smashbox, you don't see the Balm doing her a lot, or at least I don't see the Balm being heavily repped on Trend Move. Now, I don't know if it's a case of they actually aren't doing anything, or it's just out of sight, out of mind, because Trend Mood, while I appreciate her hustle and what she does, sometimes isn't the most inclusive on the brands that she represents on her page. And yes, I do understand that there is a myriad of brands that could not ever always be discussed on Instagram, but if we can post 1,200 times about Too Faced. I think we can post about a couple others as well. But for a while there, people were all like, oh yeah, we gotta have that Bahama Mama, we gotta have all them. I mean, I have a large amount of their blushes because I love blush. I have an issues. I have, I think, I want to say Frat Boy on my cheekies today because the Balm blushes are currently in my makeup rotation because I have them, but I don't use them. But you know, and you think about, this is part of it, when you think about, there are a lot of brands that have sort of fallen back onto safety, sort of in, we're gonna maintain our aesthetic, which, you know, to a certain degree is a good thing because you like being able to rely on knowing what you're going to get from a company, you know, but rather than, you know, they aren't cutting edge. They aren't a brand that's releasing anything that's like, wow, that's different, that's unique, that's a color story. Once again, story, theory, story. You know, but that's something we haven't seen from anyone else before. It's like, no, not really. Oh, you're kind of a vintagey, pinny up aesthetic sort of thing. All right, you know, we've come to rely on that. But I think to a certain degree in today's makeup climate, that isn't enough anymore. People want more, which is funny because we also want less. We want more from Too Faced in the sense of quality and aesthetic and consistency, but we want them to release less. Significantly less. Literally, y'all need to calm the F down. And it's just so funny thinking about, you know, like I said, my time on YouTube and the amount of years I've been watching YouTube and beauty videos and hearing about people talk about, you know, the Balm and Smashbox and Lorac and stuff like that. And now you really don't. And it's different for Urban Decay and Too Faced compared to, say, Smashbox, Lorac, and the Balm and stuff like that. Because Too Faced and Urban Decay are still continuing to pump out products. You know, they may not be doing the best, but they're still trying to push out as much as they can. And you still hear people talking about them, but these other brands sort of have just kind of just drifted into obscurity for one reason or another. And I find it so interesting to just think about, you know, these companies and these brands and these products that you used to hear so much about, and they were the end-all be-all things. And they do occasionally pop up. I'm not saying these things are completely gone. I'm just saying that if you think about then what we talk about now, there is just a huge difference and disconnect. And I think that is a very telling testament of not just within the makeup community, because if you think about fast fashion, which I am guilty of purchasing a lot of fast fashion, but you think about the turnover and like the, oh, well, look at this top. And then you're like, well, I need that one, you know, and there's just so much turnover. You think about how much stuff, how much makeup is really being released, how much makeup we go through for it to be 5 or 6 years where this one thing was amazing, and we've gotten to the point where we've released so much that that thing, you know, we're not excited about it anymore. We're not interested in it anymore. So I do find it interesting. It's sort of like, I feel like makeup archaeology, because, you know, you're thinking and looking back on the history and as formulas and products and trends, you know, and things like that get released. It's just so interesting to uncover and dissect the layers from years and releases and all that. I do have, I think, enough other brands to do another version of this. If you would like to see that, please let me know down below. I'm really enjoying creating content, not more thoughtful content that isn't just based around me, you know, purchasing or talking about new makeup. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about these brands and your personal opinions on it, as well as a brand that you think is one that used to be the best and kind of where it's at now. Like, you know, it's so interesting. Think about what goes into the rise and fall of a brand, you know, and does it have to do with the brand's own fall? Or, you know, is it brought about by you and I, the consumer? Just something that I think would be interesting to open up a discussion. But I love you. Oh my goodness. It's always so awkward when you're like, I know exactly what my outro is, and you're like, I can't do it. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you. And as always, keep it real. Mwah.